Have you ever been driving down the road and you hit a pothole? Pop! You hear your tire blow. You pull over. What's the next step? You have to change your tire. Hi, my name is Justin Prentice, and today I will be explaining to you how to change a tire. There will be many parts I go over here where you can find your scissor jack and lug nut removing tool. The tools that you can use alongside with it if you do have them available. The steps to actually change the tire, and some tips and tricks that I have that I'm going to tell you guys. To start, I'm going to start with where do you find the scissor jack and the lug nut removal tool. Now, in most SUVs and sedans of today, they'll be located in the trunk underneath the compartment. Sometimes they are tightened down with a screw to keep it all tight and compact, but it just depends on the vehicle. Now, this varies a little bit between the vehicles, but it's basically all the same across the board. Now, if you have a smaller compact car, sometimes the wheel and the scissor jack will be separated. So in one of my parents' cars, the scissor jack is underneath the driver's side seat and the wheel is in the trunk. Another popular one is, and it's popular with trucks and minivans, is that the scissor jack will be located somewhere within the vehicle and the tire will be actually underneath the car, held up with a pulley system, and that's how you remove it off the car. It just depends on the vehicle, but I was assuming that most people either had an SUV or sedan, so that's what I would be showing it on today. So, to start, what is the tools that you need? All your cars should come from factory with a scissor jack and a lug nut removing tool. And this is the minimum amount of tools that you need to change your tire. It's actually astonishing, you only need two things. Today I won't be showing you how to do it with these two, as this is meant to be used in an emergency situation, and this isn't one, I'm just doing it in a demonstration purposes. So I'll explain how it works. So righty-tighty, lefty-loosey is how this works. It's the same with almost all vehicles. Now, with this lug nut removing tool, that's how you tighten this down. It just depends on the car. Some don't, some do. It just depends. But I won't be showing it with these because they're not as easy as the tools I have, and they're meant for more of a pinch and not long-term use. What I will be using is a pump jack and a jack stand. The pump jack is what I'll use to get the car up in the air, and the jack stand will be used what I hold the car up in the air with. Now, with a scissor jack, it basically combines both into one, but again, it's meant for an emergency situation that isn't meant for like me doing a demonstration purpose. So I won't be using it for that. The other tool that I will be using is, I won't be using the lug nut removal tool, but I will be using a breaker bar. And I'll be using a breaker bar because it creates more torque on the lug nuts, making it easier to take the lug nuts off. Now, of course, this always works, and it could work easily just fine on these. But because I have a breaker bar at my disposal, I will be using that. The other thing that I will be using for mine, but you might not have at your disposal, is a torque wrench. Now, this will be used at the end, and that's how you torque the wheel back to spec. For most cars, it's 100 foot-pounds, but again, it just depends on the vehicle, but for mine, it is 100 foot-pounds, and I will show you how to use this later on down the line. In this next part, I will be showing you all the steps on how to change your tire. Okay, so this is the tire that I'll be using. So I'm going to show you how to remove one lug nut, and it is quite easy. So I'm going to be using a breaker bar, and I'm going to also be using a 19mm socket at the end of it. But this varies depending on your car. So one thing that I will want to tell you is you want to break all your lug nuts loose first before you get the car up in the air. Because if you do not do that, you'll have your tire spinning while it's up in the air, and again, you won't be able to get the tire off. So what you do, you put it on, and again, it's lefty-loosey. So you just push down, and it's loose. The next step is going to be lifting your car up in the air after you have broke all the lug nuts loose. Now, again, I'm going to be using a pump jack, where you could also be using a scissor jack, but I will be doing a pump jack, and this is how you use this. You just pump it up, and one thing that you want to make sure of is that you have it lined up in the spot that your car is supposed to be jacked up at. Most cars do have an indication. It'll be either in the metal, or mine, there's plastic under here, and there's a hole where you make contact with the frame itself. So again, you just pump it up, and as you can see, the car is going up into the air, and that will be how you do it on your vehicle. As you can see, now I have the car fully completely up in the air, and I will now be placing the jack stand under it. Now I will slowly release the pressure on this and it'll lower down onto the jack stand. Now again though, if you were using a scissor jack though, again it works as like a 2-in-1. So when you get it up, it's up, and it's when you lower it down, it lowers down. So I'm going to do that now. Now, as you can see, that kind of fell down. You're not really wanting to do that, but unfortunately this is getting old, so it's not as sensitive as it should be. And again, if you do have equipment that isn't working right, you probably shouldn't be using it. And I didn't know that until just now. So for future, I will not be using this. So now the next step is we're going to make sure we take off all the lug nuts that were on the vehicle, and we're going to take the tire off. Okay, so now that the car is in the air and the tire is off the ground, you're going to just make sure you remove all the lug nuts. Now, I'll be showing you how to just, again, finish off one, which I used my 19mm socket to help me thread it out, and you can just do it by your hand or even the whole thing without. And now I will be doing it for the rest of the 4 of them, and then I will be showing you how to take the tire off after that. Alright, so now I have removed all the lug nuts, and the next step is to remove the tire. Now, mine did come off fairly easily. Now, that depends on your vehicle. Sometimes these can be rusted to the hub of the vehicle, which I will show you right now. Whoops. So this is the hub right here, and you want to make sure that it sometimes will rust to this, and if it does, sometimes you'll have to like hit the tire or something to get it off. But again, mine came right off, so no worries then. So, and now the next step is you basically do the reverse of that said process. Now, again, you would most likely be using a spare tire, or a lot of times they'll be called donuts. They're a smaller tire than your actual tire. But again, because I didn't actually have a blowout, I'm not going to be using my spare tire. I'm just going to be putting back on my same tire. So, again, you're just going to want to bring your tire back in. And one thing that I will like to tell you guys is that you want to make sure you line it up right. But one thing that I will show you in a minute is that you want to make sure that the tire goes back onto the hub, because if it doesn't, your tire won't be flush with the car, and that can cause your tire to actually fall off while you're driving later down on the line if you don't have it right. So in this next step, I'm going to be putting the tire back on, and I'll show you how to make sure that it's on the hub. Alright, so now as you can see, I've gotten the tire basically back on, but you see how it wobbles a little bit? So that tells me that the tire is not on the hub. So depending on what you have to do, you might have to move it right, left, or sideways. And you just want to make sure that when you almost feel it get onto the hub itself. And I will kind of show you that. And there, it's on the hub. So again, you want to just make sure that it's not moving around a lot, because if it is, it's not actually on the hub. Alright, the next step is to put lug nuts back on. So again, you just tighten them down with your hand. And one thing I will like to tell you is here you should do it in a star pattern. So go from 1 to 1 to 1 to 1 to 1. Then drop the car down. So now that you have all the lug nuts hand tight in the star pattern, you'll simply lower the car down. Now again, I have the pump jack and the jack stand, so I'll remove the jack stand and then I will slowly lower down the pump. Now that the car's down on the ground, you'll be tightening the lug nuts. Remember to do this in a star pattern, because if you don't, the vehicle's tire will not be flush with the car. So in the end, I hope you can remember, and I hope that you do now know how to change the tire, and I hope you remember where your jack stand is, the tools that you need for it, the steps on how to do it, and some tips and tricks throughout the video that I told you on. Makes the job easier and faster. Bye.